Okay, here we are. I'm focused. Hello everyone, welcome back to another WhatTheJack video. It's been a while since I've stood here with a microphone, which can only mean one thing. I'm talking about Destiny again. This time, not necessarily in a positive light, unfortunately. So as you may have seen, I recently streamed the new DLC of Destiny. My initial thoughts were really good. Damage with it? Yeah. Flip you, mate. However, as time went on and I completed the campaign, there's a lot of things I'm going to cover in this video which just are not up to par with any of the previous 10 years of Destiny. And it's made me kind of sad, really. I'm not angry about it. I'm not like completely distraught because it's only a game, but it is a game series that I've loved and have loved since like the alpha stages of Destiny 1. So I think I have the right to have a stake in what I'm about to say. Now, I am a fair man. I like all sorts of different stuff. I'm not exclusively like, oh, I'm only really into shooter games or whatever. And I try to remain as fair and impartial as possible when I'm playing these games. So we're going to start off with some of the pros for this new DLC. One, the story is actually really good. Yes, it's a bit confusing. It's more timey-wimey kind of stuff, but it's all kind of centered around the 9, and no one really knows anything about the 9, and even people that have played it since day one. Obviously, we know that the 9 exists, but that's about the extent of it. So it's a really good starting point for a new arc for the game. Makes it a really good point to hop back in and makes it feel really fresh even for really old players like me. 2, besides Ikora, who sounds remarkably like one of the old villains Sabbathun. I think Ikora's voice actor was on strike or something. But yeah, besides that, literally all of them, especially a character called Lodi, all of those voice lines are delivered with such realistic sounding tension and emotion, and it feels real, if that makes sense. It's not kind of like typical video game kind of dialogue. It feels more real when they're talking and when they're having conversations. 3, Matter Spark is fun. Oh, is this where we can turn into one of those little balls? Yeah. That's the ball mode. 4, Kepler looks great. Kepler's the new destination for the DLC. It has a completely fresh look than any of the previous content. It feels new. Even just the way that you navigate the area with the new abilities and stuff, it's new, it's fresh, it's cool. And that's it for the positives. It's not looking good, is it? So first up, once you've completed the main story, there's nothing to do. It's completely void of any sort of endgame content. There's a couple of things. You can go and get the only new exotic gun in the actual core DLC. You can play the new Sieve game mode, I guess. You can replay the exact same story missions again on a higher difficulty. That's it. They released a raid, but for players like me, that's really hard because I don't really have 6 friends who play Destiny. Obviously, without 6 friends, can't play it. You can LFG it, but we all know what LFG is like. LFG is looking for group if anyone hasn't played Destiny before. Besides that, you can replay old content. You can replay old strikes with the new gear. That's still just old content. The story can be completed quickly, which is typical of a live service game like Destiny, but usually there's like more stuff to do after that. And I just feel like as part of the core DLC, there's nothing. Usually you could argue that DLC releases with the seasonal content as well, which it hasn't. There's a season pass called Reclamation, but does it actually offer any new story content? No, it's just a season pass. So even if you're looking for an expanded story after the events of the DLC, you ain't going to get it. Now, here is a massive gripe that I have, and I know that pretty much anyone I play it with has as well. There's no point in grinding for anything with the new leveling system they've got. Basically, they've reset all of the numbers. Instead of being like power score 2000 and something, you start from 10 again and you go all the way up to 400, I think is the cap. I think, don't quote me on that. However, when you do a end game difficulty tier, like Fabled, Mythic, Raid, whatever, you're capped at a specific power level. So for example, if you were to do the story missions again on Mythic difficulty, which you need to do for some of the progress, you're capped 50 levels below that world tier. So whether you're 200 or 400 in power score, doesn't matter. You're going to be exactly the same when you join Mythic tier, which then leads to the question, what is the fucking point? What's the point in grinding to get to gear level 400 or power level 400, whatever it's called nowadays, just to be stuck at the same power level as everyone else anyway? The only single reason I can see for you wanting to grind out a better gear is the new tier system they've got. You'll get like slight incremental buffs on the weapons and the armor that you equip, different perks and whatnot, you know how it goes. But they're so incremental, you can have like a really well stacked list of perks on your armor, but if you've got like a broken exotic weapon, doesn't matter. It's honestly crazy. I don't know who approved this decision. At the time, on paper, I thought, cool, because it means that endgame content is actually going to be hard. But then when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, the endgame content is going to be hard, but there's also going to be 0 point to even doing it in the first place. Okay, we're moving swiftly on. As I mentioned before, this DLC has only one new exotic weapon. One. By the way, when I say this, I'm not talking about seasonal stuff. I'm not talking about season pass exotics. I'm talking about exotics which are specific in that DLC. So for example, if I was to list a Lightfall exotic, I would say Winterbite, because that didn't come from a season pass. That didn't come from any of the seasonal content. That came from the Lightfall DLC. Now this new gun, being the only one, you'd think it would be fun to use, right? You'd think it would be powerful. You'd think it would be worth your time. No. Well, actually, technically, that's a bit harsh. Yes, it is powerful. It is good. It's a exotic hand cannon. It ad clears really well. However, there's a big problem. Its exotic perk is basically if you get 3 final blows or 3 precision hits, it overcharges the other element. So if you've got 3 precision hits on stasis, it would overcharge arc. If you've got 3 precision hits on arc, it would overcharge stasis. However, when you get an overcharge, it cancels out the overcharge for the element you just got. So, for example, I'm fighting some fairly easy enemies or a boss with a big weak point. I'm shooting, I've got my overcharge, I swap to that element. A couple seconds later, I've just negated. I've still got 3/4 of that element supercharge left, but it cancels it because I overcharged the other element. So basically you have to keep swapping over and over again, which, as you can imagine, completely breaks the flow of combat. And just to give you an example, so on your controller, you're playing, you're shooting, blah, 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 you're doing whatever. Basically, I'm shooting, I've got 3 precision shots, hold X, wait for it to swap. Shooting, oh no, I've got 3 precision shots again, hold X, wait for it to swap. I'm shooting, oh, I've got 3 precision shots again, hold X, wait for it to swap. How fucking boring is that? The actual design of the gun is cool. The actual kind of way that you swap between arc and stasis is really cool. Hardly ever see stasis and arc used together in the same time. It's just a shame about the way that it works. Like, could it not have been that you can still overcharge it, but it doesn't cancel out, so you can use the overcharge you've already got and then swap again? I don't know. It just seems a bit crap. So here's where I'm going to talk to you about the content. Bear in mind everything I've just said. I have made a table with Lightfall content, Final Shape content, and then Edge of Fate content, which I'm going to display here. On initial look, you can see there's gaps for this DLC. All 3 DLCs are exactly the same price. Just saying. So with all 3 DLCs, you obviously get a campaign, right? And they all released with a raid in the first week, which is good. Usually you get some exotic armor. So for Lightfall, each class got 2 sets of exotic armor. In Final Shape, each class got 3 sets. That is including the exotic class item though. In Edge of Fate, there is 1 exotic armor set per class. Which, by the way, is really easy to get if you just play the campaign on legendary difficulty, so you can get that exotic armor straight away. In Lightfall, you had 3 exotic weapons. You had the Final Warning, which is an exotic sidearm. You had Deterministic Chaos, which was a heavy machine gun. And you also had Winter's Bite, which is a glaive, a heavy glaive actually. I think all 3 of those had their own storylines to actually obtain the weapon, and they all had their own kind of lore attached to it. Some of it was really cool. I really enjoyed the Deterministic Chaos storyline. With the Final Shape, you get 3 exotics. You get Ergosum, the exotic sword, Steel Hunt, the exotic sniper rifle, and Microcosm, the exotic heavy trace rifle. Again, all 3 of these have their own unique storylines with their own lore attached. Ergosum's was really cool because that's the sword that's on your grave in some of the earlier kind of story elements. I don't know how else to describe it. Edge of Fate, 1 exotic, doesn't really have its own lore. It has its own quest line, but it is literally pick up this piece, then go to this part of the map and pick up this piece, and then go to this part of the map and pick up this piece. Oh, you've got the gun now. Good. And we've already talked about the drawbacks of that. There is one more drawback of it, which I'm going to get to in a slightly later point. So, Lightfall and the Final Shape both had a strike that released with it as part of the core game as well. Edge of Fate did not. Other activities we had in Lightfall, Terminal Overload, which was a public event, which happened at all times and just rotated around the map. And you also had Partition, which was kind of like a small time trial mode. Final Shape, you had Excision, which was a 12-player mode where you kind of fought the Witness, I think. You had Overthrow, which, similar to Terminal Overload, was a public event which was active at all times, just rotated around the map. You could also start it from orbit, which was quite handy. And you also had the Dual Destiny questline, which was the questline for the exotic class item. The reason I've put it in the additional modes is because it was a completely different questline. It was long, it was challenging, it was worth the time that you invested into it, so therefore I thought it was only fair that it's included as a separate activity. It's a bonus. Edge of Fate has one thing, it's called the Sieve, or the Civ, however you pronounce it. It's a public event, which is exactly the same every single time, and it only comes around every hour and a half. If you're logged on in the hour and a half that it's not on, then you can't play it. Fuck you. Oh, it's crazy to think, actually. Okay, so in Lightfall, you've got the new Strand subclass, which was completely new darkness. It was cool how the whole story around it was that you kind of found it and developed it yourself. I feel like Lightfall gets a lot of hate, whereas actually when you look back and you think about it, like, yeah, there was some dull moments, but it was a cool concept, I think. Final Shape, you got Prismatic, which I would class as a new class entirely, because you mixed light and dark together. So instead of just having one of the subclasses, you could have Void and Stasis, for example. You could mix 3 together. You could mix as many as you want and create your own class, as well as adding new supers and things for majority of the classes as well. Edge of Fate, you got new abilities, which only really help you navigate the map, and you can only use in Kepler. So I don't really... That's why I haven't coloured it. I don't class it as a new thing. But it does exist, so honourable mention, but nah. Lastly, seasonal content available on release. Lightfall and Final Shape both had seasonal content available on release. So when you completed the main storyline, the main campaign, you had bits that furthered the story after that. For example, in Lightfall's one, you had Season of Defiance, which then was basically about defending the places that were being attacked. The Final Shape started with Echoes, which was literally directly after the storyline. I'm not going to say what it was about because that's spoilers. Edge of Fate, nothing again. Say, there's a season pass. Is there any story content? No, that's crazy. I'm going to throw it back in the mix that all 3 of the DLCs are exactly the same price. You pay exactly the same amount of money day one for all 3 of those. So why have we got like half the content? Moving on, all of the endgame content is ridiculously too hard. I have diehard friends who play Destiny pretty much every day, all day. Even they struggle with Mythic because of the new system. However, pulling the pin out of the point with the new exotic hand cannon from earlier, to fully unlock that weapon and get all of the catalysts for it, you need to complete the campaign missions again on Mythic difficulty. 1, you've just backtracked the entire game you've just played again. 2, it's really fucking hard. You're locked 50 levels below the level of the world, which means that all the enemies are super tanky. They've all got super good buffs on. For a player like me, I'm never going to do that. Unless I have help from professional players, I'm never going to do that. I can't. I'm literally not good enough. This point also links back to a previous point about what's the point of even getting the new gear in the first place. So say you're completing the missions again on Mythic difficulty, you've got this 5-tier loot now, you're like, yes, I'm stacked with the best gear that I possibly can have in the game. Good for you. What's the point? When you join a raid or something, your gear score is going to go straight down to whatever it's locked at. The only difference is that yours says tier 5 and mine says tier 3. That's it. So what was the point in completing it on Mythic difficulty? Don't know. One of my personal massive flaws with gaming in general is the fact that we're kind of expected to backtrack a lot nowadays. Companies can release the same missions again and again. You're expected to just go back over it over and over and over again. Completely different game, but Crash Bandicoot 4 had that exact issue where you had to play over the missions. You had to play over the levels like, 8 times just to get all the gems in that level. Exactly the same here. For example, the one new exotic gun that you get, there is 3 intrinsic mods for that, and there's 4 catalysts. That's how you fully unlock the gun, make it masterwork, make it like complete, right? The 4 catalysts are split into 3 parts across the map. Guess what difficulty you have to complete the game on to be able to access those? Mythic. So you have to play all the missions normally, then you have to play all the missions on Mythic, which is like impossible anyway, and then you have to access the areas which are unlocked after you've completed it on Mythic again, find those parts, backtrack your whole way back through. That's insane. That is 2, at minimum, 2 run-throughs of the main game. 1 on an easy difficulty, 1 on an impossible difficulty, 3 intrinsics, that's 2. 3 intrinsics, and 4 catalysts, which are split 3 times over. That's 15, by the way. 12 catalyst parts, 3 intrinsic mods. That is literally just for those. When you start to add in the side missions and the sieve mode, the amount that you're backtracking these areas is just so tedious and boring. Could it not be that the sieve mode had its own little arena? Could it not be that to find the parts for the gun it was on like Mercury or something? I don't know. Just anything, anywhere else. Okay, the final point I'm going to say about this is that there is one more new thing. It's called the portal. That's where seasonal stuff happens. That's kind of like your snapshot of new stuff in the game. I say new with much hesitancy. There isn't even new strike with this update. So all of the kind of new solo ops and stuff, they're just old strikes. They're just old modes. So it is literally just playing old content again with a new way to say, yes, I want to play that content again. Today, just before I'm filming this video, I replayed The Devil's Lair, which is Destiny 1 strike again. Doesn't matter that it's called the portal now. It doesn't matter that it's a different layout of the main screen. It's still exactly the same content as it has been for over a decade, and that's crazy. Now, I know that some of the die-hard fans are going to come at me and say, yeah, but they're going to add more stuff. They've got the Ash and Iron update that's coming up. They've got other new things that are going to be released throughout the year. Yes, they will. Don't forget, though, I'm talking about the core DLC experience, the thing that you've actually paid the money for. If, for example, they added a new exotic gun for one of the later kind of seasonal content, I don't count that as part of the core DLC because 1, those are usually free and have their own kind of paid pass anyway, and 2, it wasn't available on release. So even if they do add that content later on, it's kind of not enough. closing thoughts. Speaking very personally, I think I should have just hung up the Guardian gear after Final Shape. Once the whole 10-year, decade-long story had concluded, I should have just hung it all up and been like, that was a good journey. I used to play Destiny 1 back when it was in like alpha stages. And I don't know, I just feel sad about the whole trajectory of the way that it's going, to be honest. With the next expansion that's due in this year, fair enough, you still have to pay for it though. Based around Star Wars, it's literally got a collaboration with Lucasfilm. I'm not overly optimistic. That to me comes across, usually it wouldn't. I don't mind crossovers or anything like that, but in the current state of Destiny and some of the decisions that are being made, it comes across to me like it's much more of a cash grab. It's much more like, we're going to prey on the people who really enjoy Star Wars and really enjoy Destiny. I'm going to be like, whoa, it's like the first ever actual like DLC collaboration, so come pay. I might be wrong about that. We'll see. Time will tell, won't it? This video does come purely from a place of disappointment. It is absolutely not in any form of like, oh, Bungie needs to change, blah, 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 blah. It's purely my thoughts from an actual Destiny veteran who, Destiny has been a part of my life. So one thing I really want to stress is don't let my views on this whole thing ruin your experience. If you like the game as it is, you enjoy the content that there is to offer, you feel like it's a worthwhile purchase for you, go for it. There's absolutely nothing stopping you from doing that, and I am very happy for you that you do still enjoy it in this state. All the power to you. We will see what the future holds, but for now I'm hanging up the Hawk Moon and going for a bit of a rest, I think. See you in a bit. Don't forget to subscribe, by the way, and buy the merch, link in the description. Thanks.